All right, everyone, just another way in which the Big Ten and the rest of college football does not get this right. But it is a scheduled release and something to talk about and something to get excited about. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. And we are doing an impromptu, unscheduled schedule release live edition right here with you. So hopefully people will get this notification and can join us for the next several minutes as we run down the Big Ten schedule and see what other games have been scheduled across college football. Would like to remind everyone to please, before you get settled, hit the like button and also subscribe. And one of the big reasons you want to subscribe is you hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, which means now. So most of you are probably subscribed unless you're going to watch this later and find out that you missed our live stream, because you've got to subscribe. Make sure that bell is clicked for the notifications to know when we go live. When you shop Amazon, please use the link in the description section below as well. You shop on Amazon already, so you might as well use our link. You spend $100, let's say. That's just an example. Spend $100 on Amazon. Send us a buck or two. That would be phenomenal. All right, let's get to the schedule release. And I will let you know before we get to this, you've probably heard me say in the past, for many of you who have been on board for quite some time, that this is the way I would do it. A couple of weeks ago, the NFL released its schedule. The NFL schedule release is probably the biggest, most hyped non-event in sports. It shouldn't be a big deal, but it is. And that's the expertise and that's the mastery of the NFL. The NFL can take a schedule release and make it an event that is bigger than anything else going on in sports that day or that week. I don't care what games are being played in the NBA, Major League Baseball, what golf tournaments going on, what else is going on. Even in college football with the transfer portal and all sorts of happenings around, nothing compares on the sports landscape to the NFL schedule release. Therefore, what college football should do, and we have discussed this recently about college football, is that the powers that be, meaning the conferences and the conference commissioners, need to come together and unify. They need to collaborate in making this a national sport. In so many ways, it's a national sport. In other ways, it's still a regional sport. It should be a regional sport in regards to the conferences and them knowing what their fans like, the culture, the environment, the landscape, the weather, everything that's connected, the food and everything else that's connected to that particular region of the country. But when it comes to structuring the sport, it needs to be structured nationally. And this is another big reason why right here, scheduling. The programs themselves should not be scheduling themselves. Should be scheduled for them, because the programs are always going to be self-serving. So there should not be teams and programs running around scheduling themselves and scheduling games 10 years in advance. That's idiotic. Okay, I will lay out my scheduling formula as I have a number of times quickly. But when it comes out down to the promotion of the sport, there should be a college football scheduling release. Just like the NFL, there should be a college football schedule release that captures the nation, that grabs all the headlines on May 1st, for example, just throwing out a date. On May 1st every year, the college football fan knows the schedule release is coming. And I'm not talking about what we're looking at right here with dates and times. I'm talking about the entire schedule with opponents. We should know what the opponents are 10 years in advance. That's stupid. That's moronic. That's idiotic. We don't need to know who the opponents are 5 years in advance. These contracts should not be scheduled 5 years in advance. College football should come under one umbrella, And that should be the scheduling. The scheduling should be one component that has nothing to do with the conferences and the schools themselves in regards to a schedule release. I wasn't going to get into all that. I was just going to run down the Big Ten schedule and any other college football schedules that have come out. Maybe the SEC as well. I don't know, because I saw a couple of comments made on Twitter concerning the SEC. But just imagine, instead of finding out Georgia and Notre Dame are playing in 2032, who cares? We don't need to know that. That doesn't need to be scheduled. Why? It needs to be scheduled within this current structure, or else you're not going to be able to get Notre Dame or Georgia 10 years from now if you don't schedule them now. Yes, I understand why it's done within this structure and system, but the structure and system needs to be obliterated. Take the scheduling out of the hands of the schools and give it to the conferences for the conference scheduling, and give it to a overriding committee that deals with metrics and composite 500 scheduling to schedule the entire college football schedule. We should know what's going on in 23, 24, 25, 26, 32, 38. We only deal with the 2022 schedule, and there's a schedule release, much like the NFL does, and it captivates the nation. Everybody can't wait. The college football schedule is going to be released on May 1st, and we have no idea who's going to play whom, except for they play in the same conference, and it would grab the attention just like the NFL schedule release. That's the way it should be done. All right, I'll get off my soapbox because I've explained that better in previous videos and run that down point by point by point by point. And again, that wasn't my intention here, but it just gets me fired up, because this is just another way in which college football completely misses it, screws it up. The schedule release should be nearly as big as the NFL schedule release. It actually should be bigger, because the NFL schedule release, as I said a few minutes ago, is the most overhyped non-event in sports, but the NFL, to its credit, has made it huge. It completely trumps, it completely overshadows anything else going on in sports for that 3 or 4 days. I can take any NFL team and I can tell you, without even thinking about it, who 12 or 13 out of their 17 opponents are going to be. There's no secret to the NFL scheduling formula. Why is the release of the schedule that fascinating to anyone? It's because the NFL knows how to market, knows how to hype. College football should know how to do the same thing. And actually, the college football schedule release would be more legitimate, because people would not know outside of conference who is playing whom. That's the way it should be done. I am seeing some internet issues. Hopefully everybody can see and hear me. Let me know if you can't. And then we're going to get to the schedule right now. It looks like everything's fine. Thank you, Husker D. I appreciate it. I didn't feel like I explained that well, because I've explained it so many times in the past, and I got to realize that we've got new viewers, new subscribers all the time, which I'm so much appreciative of. But many times I've explained this for years and years and years and years, but I have to understand, it needs to be explained again. And not everybody watches everything, of course. Oh, Joey. I'm a few years above 21. Nobody needs to know about that day. Like I told Joey earlier today, because we were talking about the West Virginia show that we typically do on Friday night, that it totally, as it does every year, completely went by me that it was going to be my birthday on Friday. I had no idea, except for my kids texting me and saying, "What do you want to do for your birthday tomorrow?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, my birthday's tomorrow. Big deal." Except for, they said, "Do you want to go out?" Well, of course. I said, "I want to go out with you all the time. It doesn't have to be my birthday. I always want to go out with you too. You already know that." So The beer money, I can do without any beer. Beer at this age pretty much disgusts me. Ballard, good to see you. Ballard, I will ask you because you would be the one to know this. Has the SEC released its scheduled dates and times as well? Yes, Mayhem Matthew. As it stands right now, the SEC is better than the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is better than everybody else in college football. Okay, let's get to the Big Ten schedule. I would have liked to have had graphics to support all this, but it's good to see everybody here. Let's Toast Media, Mayhem Matthew, Jason's here. Good, good, good. All right, on to the Big Ten schedule. There are two Big Ten teams playing, actually three Big Ten teams playing 2 games on opening weekend, meaning week 0. And that would be Nebraska Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland. Of course, that's going to be on Fox at 12:30. So Nebraska, for a second consecutive year, plays in week 0. Didn't go so well last year for the Huskers, playing at Illinois and losing that game. Nebraska desperately needs to win this game against Northwestern. Big Ten game right out of the gate in Dublin. Nebraska's already like a 9 or 10 point favorite in this game against Northwestern and beat the Wildcats last year 56-7. Northwestern has been on this odd good year, bad year, good year, bad year trend over the last 4 years, in which who else could say this in college football? In the last 4 seasons, Northwestern has won 2 division championships. Therefore, they've played in 2 conference championship games in 4 years. And the other 2 years, they went 3-9. All right. I'm intrigued by the other game. Actually, despite Nebraska Northwestern being such a bigger game because it's a conference game, I am intrigued by the other Big Ten game in week 0 because Illinois is susceptible at home against Wyoming. That could be an upset right there. Illinois has lost in recent years to Charlotte. They got drubbed by Virginia last year. They lost to Texas San Antonio. And yes, Illinois is susceptible at home, losing to Wyoming. So that's week 0, Northwestern, Nebraska in Dublin at 12:30 Eastern time on Fox. And then we go to the Big Ten Network with Wyoming and Illinois. Think about that. It's May 26th, 3 months and 1 day from right now. We're going to be watching college football in the Big Ten in particular. All right. The next Thursday, September 1st. This is an amazing game on September 1st right here. Penn State, Purdue on Fox at 8 Eastern. I want to see that game so bad. I think that's going to be a great game. I think the Big Ten is smart in scheduling a solid, really good game on that Thursday night to captivate the audience, as they did last year with Ohio State, Minnesota. So they do it again this year. Penn State at Purdue. Huge game. Aiden O'Connell, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, taking on a Penn State defense that should be one of the best in the Big Ten, despite being depleted heavily by the NFL draft. Penn State, Purdue, huge game in the Big Ten right out of the gate. As both teams are gunning for division championships. Penn State had a down year at 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten last year. Penn State so much better than the 11 wins and 11 losses that they have posted over the last 2 years. I would say that Penn State, off the top of my head, the most underachieving team in college football last year. Penn State, 7-6. That team, 7-6. Bad job by James Franklin. Of course, Sean Clifford got hurt against Iowa, and it came unraveled after that. They were a top 5 team heading into that game. And again, Aiden O'Connell, one of the more impressive quarterbacks in the country. I want to remind everyone that I just posted a top 10 running backs video. And hopefully I'm not killing the views to that by going live at the same time that I premiered that video. But I was not expecting to go live, but I saw tweets going out about the Big Ten schedule. So we jumped on it. All right. On that Friday night, Well, first of all, on Thursday, in addition to Penn State, Purdue, you've got New Mexico State at Purdue, at Minnesota. That is on the Big Ten Network. New Mexico State at Minnesota. Then on Friday, Western Michigan at Michigan State. Don't look past Western Michigan, Mel Tucker. Michigan State's done well in recent years, I would say over the last 10 years, of playing a lot of Thursday and Friday games on opening weekend. And I think that's smart. You get yourself on a so it doesn't break up a game week because it's the first game of the season. So you can prepare for weeks and weeks and weeks for that opponent, and you didn't already play a game. So it's not like playing a Thursday or Friday game and messing up your schedule within the season. It's the first game. So Michigan State, I don't know if they've done this intentionally or they have just by coincidence been selected by the Big Ten repeatedly to play a ton of Thursday and Friday games, mostly Friday games, the first week of the season. And again, it's smart. You get on national TV. You don't have hardly any competition for views, and it doesn't mess up with your schedule yet because it's the first game. So Western Michigan at Michigan State, and again, Michigan State's played a ton of these games. Boise State, in a big game by Le'Veon Bell, comes to mind in 2012. Also, some other games against the likes of Western Michigan and Central Michigan for Sparty. Illinois at Indiana. So Illinois playing a week 0 game at home against Wyoming will have less time to prepare for Indiana. So on the benefit advantage side for Illinois, they would have played a game. So typically teams, and I think this is true, so this is a cliche. I typically shoot down cliches or theories that haven't been backed up. But this one makes sense. Totally makes sense that a team should improve the most between game 1 and game 2. Illinois would have played Wyoming at home in week 0. They turn around on a Friday night and go to Indiana. And that game's going to be on FS1 at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So 2 Big Ten games on at the same time, one on ESPN with Michigan State hosting Western Michigan and Illinois, Indiana on FS1 on that Friday night. On Saturday, okay, here we go. This is week 1. South Dakota State at Iowa. We did a preview on our Iowa channel with the South Dakota State play-by-play announcer. Check that out. Buffalo at Maryland on the Big Ten Network. Colorado State at Michigan. We also previewed that one with Steve Helwick on our Michigan channel. That's an ABC game at noon Eastern. Rutgers at Boston College. So this being the first of the Big Ten versus non-conference Power 5 opponents. This is the first one. This is where we start to measure conferences. Who has the best conference? How do the conferences stack up? This is the first measure of that. Rutgers, supposed to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, coming off a 5-8 season, taking on Boston College. BC was 7-5 with Jeff Hafley, but only 2-6. They went 7-5, or did they go? I believe they went 6-6, 2-6 in the ACC. So that's going to be on the ACC network. Rutgers, BC, North Dakota at Nebraska on the Big Ten Network at 3:30. And Husker fans are hoping desperately that they can win their Big Ten opener, or otherwise a long plane flight coming home to Nebraska after losing to Northwestern and then having to prepare for a team that you know you should beat, will beat, but it doesn't matter, North Dakota, and having to wait until week 3 or 4 with Georgia Southern, actually until week 4. So if Nebraska loses to Northwestern, think about this. Long trip back, South Dakota's next, then Georgia Southern. They win nothing by winning those 2 games. They have to win the 2 games, but even by notching 2 W's, Nebraska will have accomplished nothing the first 3 weeks of the season. A loss in Big Ten play to Northwestern, long trip back. They win over group of 5 and FCS opponents leading into Oklahoma. So Nebraska desperately for the psyche and the momentum of the program, especially with all these key additions through the transfer portal, have to beat Northwestern. But the Huskers, game 2, week 1, North Dakota at Lincoln, 3:30 Big Ten Network. Illinois State at Wisconsin, that's on FS1. And then, of course, the huge one, not the big one, the huge, enormous game, the most important game of week 1 as it stands right now. Now, of course, if Notre Dame falters and Ohio State falters, then it ceases to be the most important game of week 1 later in the season. But most likely, and certainly out of the gate, the most prominent, the most important game of week 1, it's not even close, is Ohio State hosting Notre Dame. Wow. 7:30 Eastern, ABC, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Buckeyes have won the last 4 meetings. That includes 95 and 96, both in Columbus. Eddie George had an enormous game in 95 in Columbus against Notre Dame. 45-26, I believe, was the final. And then the Buckeyes won it at South Bend the next year, 29-13, 29-16. And then they played in the 05 and 15 Fiesta Bowls, and Ohio State won competitive games, but easily, weren't down to the wire. So Notre Dame won the first 2 games in the series back in the 30s. The Buckeyes have dominated the last 4. Notre Dame at Ohio State, the Buckeyes are about a 13 or 14-point favorite in that game. I think that might be a little thick. All right, let's get to some of your comments. Husker D's here. Made it to the Big Ten Championship our first year, but yeah, definitely nothing worthy. Losing to Wisconsin. I heard a comment. I saw it posted, and I think this was pretty recent. Bo Pelini on somebody's podcast, and they reviewed, and we're just talking about the 2009 Big 12 Championship game and Nebraska getting ripped off by the scorekeeper, by the clock manager, on the final tick off the clock when Colt McCoy threw the ball out of bounds. And it's supposed to, according to Bo Pelini, and I believe this is correct, the ball has to hit something before the clock is supposed to stop, because theoretically it's supposed to be assumed that the ball is catchable, even though if the ball is thrown a million yards out of bounds, you can't make a judgment on it, even though you know it's out of bounds, plays over. The rule makes sense that it has to hit something before you know it's incomplete for sure. Otherwise, then you have to make a bunch of judgment calls that if somebody barely throws the ball out of bounds, okay, at what point was it out of bounds? No, you wait until it hits something out of bounds, and it's out of bounds. So, taking that into consideration, it's difficult to believe that the scorekeeper, the timekeeper, made the right judgment in that Big 12 championship. And it makes sense that there was a conspiracy there by the Big 12 for Texas to win, because that was the team that was set up to go to the national championship game. So the Big 12 doesn't win in 2009 by having Texas lose and not make the Big 12 championship game or make the national championship game. Okay, regardless, let's get past that. I don't even know why I brought that up. The next Saturday, September 10th, we've got Western Illinois at Minnesota. That's on the Big Ten Network. Duke at Northwestern, FS1. Those are noon games, as well as Arkansas State and Ohio State, Ohio and Penn State, Maryland at Charlotte. A lot of nothing games in the Big Ten that week. Washington State at Wisconsin. That's a pretty good game. So there you go. Fox, 3:30, week 2, September 10th, Washington State at Wisconsin. We had a conversation, I hope you've checked it out, with Washington State head coach Jake Dickert. Really good conversation with him talking about his football team. So check out that interview we posted last week. Ballard's excited for the big noon show, Alabama, Texas. That might be a first for the big noon show. It's got to be, because Alabama never plays a Big Ten or Pac-12 or Big 12 team non-conference in the regular season. So that would be, Bama's first big noon kickoff. Dave says Nebraska fans deserve the team Notre Dame has. Nebraska fans are loyal beyond belief. Willie, appreciate it. Hit the like. Ballard, I would agree. I think it's important for Purdue and Penn State both to get off to a good start. They are teams that are teetering on the brink of contention. They are not obvious contenders in the Big Ten. And again, I believe that Penn State was the most underachieving team in college football last year at 7-6. They are so much better than that. Husker D, it's a mystery. I really never thought about why college football schedules games decades in advance. The way you explained would definitely generate more hype around this sport. So one more time for people that did not join us off the top. I'm excited to see, and this is one of the reasons why we're live, because I didn't schedule this, but I saw tweets going back and forth about the Big Ten schedule. So it appears as though other schedules have been released around college football, most notably in the SEC. So I wanted to jump on live to talk about this. So I'm excited about the schedule release, but we already knew the games. We're just getting game times and networks. Okay. To follow up on what Husker D's talking about, this is how I would run college football. The NFL schedule release is a complete non-event. It should be. If you know anything about the way the NFL schedules, with 2 games home and home versus all division opponents, and then playing a rotating division in the other conference, and then understanding how the games are scheduled within your own conference, you could give me all the teams in the NFL right now and prior to the schedule release, and I could guess 12, 13, 14 of their 17 games easily. So them releasing their schedule shouldn't be a big deal, but it is, because they know how to market and hype and build an audience and make it an event. They did that years ago with the NFL draft when that was nothing. They made it a spectacle. And now they've done this with the schedule release. College football could do the same thing, and it would be even more dramatic and important because the conferences can do their own schedules, okay, within conference play. So right now, the ACC's released its scheduling model going forward, the 3-5-5 that we've discussed many times. The Big Ten's working on something. The Pac-12 has just decided this past week that going forward in 2022 and beyond, that they will be playing a championship game of seeds 1 versus 2 and not the divisions. So the conferences can, I have opinion about how the conferences should schedule, and I've made those very clear. But let's say the conferences just schedule their own games. Fine. There needs to be a formula to schedule non-conference games. I'm not going to lay it out right here, but I have many times in many videos that I've got a scheduling formula that would schedule non-conference games. And the scheduling of those non-conference games would have much to do, almost everything to do, with how the teams finished the year before. Because what we want to create is equitable, fair schedules. We don't want one team playing a ridiculously difficult non-conference schedule and another team playing nobody. We don't want USC playing Notre Dame and Alabama and Fresno State in a non-conference schedule like they had scheduled a couple of years ago, and Baylor playing no one. Lamar, Sam Houston State, Rice. We don't want that anymore. We want equitable, fair non-conference scheduling. That way we can better evaluate the teams for the playoff, for one thing, and it makes the records more valid. So you can't, if you're going to follow my formula, you can't schedule 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in advance. And there's no reason to. The NFL schedule, and especially the Major League Baseball schedule, is so much more complicated than a college football schedule. And they can schedule in the couple months after the season's over for the next season. People in college football act like it's rocket science that has to be determined for years and years and years and years to put together a schedule. No, it can be put together in weeks and then released on a date and announced over and over and over. College football fans, college football world, sports fans, because we want to bring in more college football fans. Schedule release May 1st. Mark it down. And then that would just build up a whole lot of intrigue and hype for the schedule release. But now we don't have a schedule release in college football because it's released in bits and pieces as these programs schedule these games and sign contracts. All right, so that's September 10th, week 2. The best games of the week: Virginia, Illinois. Virginia blasted Illinois in Charlottesville last year. Now the return trip to Champaign, ESPNU at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Not a whole lot of games on ESPNU by the Big Ten. That's a rare thing right there. Iowa State is the best game by far. Iowa State a week 2. Second week of play in the Big Ten. Minnesota, Western Illinois, Northwestern, Duke, Ohio State, Arkansas State, Penn State, Ohio, Charlotte and Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington State, decent game. Illinois, Virginia might be a decent game. Those teams are going nowhere, most likely. Iowa State is obviously the biggest game of the week. Michigan State, Akron, Rutgers, Wagner, Purdue, Indiana State, Nebraska, Georgia Southern, Indiana, Idaho, Michigan, Hawaii. So this is another issue. The Big Ten should be smarter than this. They shouldn't have an entire week in September. And everyone's playing. It's not like there are buys this week. Everybody's playing, and there's one really good game, really good matchup, one decent matchup, and the rest is garbage. The Big Ten should be smarter than that. They should look at their schedule and figure, okay, we've got a bad week. This is a week in which nobody's going to talk about us. The national landscape is going to ignore us for a week. Why would the Big Ten allow that? Move games around. See, if each team, each program wasn't out scheduling its own games, this wouldn't happen. If the league, in cooperation with the entire structure of college football, was cooperating to schedule games, they wouldn't allow a week like this in the Big Ten. But since Michigan State's out making its own schedule, and they just filled in Akron for that week, and Maryland's going out there scheduling Charlotte for that week, and Minnesota grabs Western Illinois, this is what the result is. A horrible week of football in the Big Ten in week 2. One game. Okay. Week 3, Western Kentucky, Indiana. They played last year. Indiana beat them barely. UConn, Michigan. The last time that Michigan went to UConn in 2013, they barely escaped. But they play on ABC at noon Eastern time. So I don't know who's going to be watching that game. UConn at Michigan. Okay, here's the game. Oklahoma at Nebraska. Of course, the Huskers gave them a good game and it should be even closer this year in Lincoln. Oklahoma at Nebraska, noon Eastern on Fox. Southern Illinois, Northwestern. Purdue at Syracuse, maybe. Colorado at Minnesota. The Gophers wiped them out 30-0 last year, but could be a bit better game this year. Okay. The second best game of the day by far, Penn State at Auburn. Nittany Lions won a close one against the Tigers in Happy Valley. This time they play on CBS at 3:30 Eastern. This has to be the last this has to be the first time that the Big Ten is played on CBS since, I believe, the Alabama-Penn State game of 2011, because that would have been the last time that the Big Ten, wait a minute. So Wisconsin played a neutral site home and home, Lambeau Field, Houston Reliance Stadium with LSU in 2014 and 16. So I believe that second game might have been on CBS. The first game was on ABC. That could be the exception. Otherwise, the last time that a Big Ten team played on CBS, I'm almost positive. Wouldn't bet the mortgage on this, but I'm almost positive the last time the Big Ten played on CBS would have been Alabama-Penn State in 2011. Because otherwise, the Big Ten doesn't get picked up by CBS because they only play the SEC games. And the Big Ten doesn't play any non-conference games against the SEC. And when they have, they've been those neutral site games on ABC and ESPN. Yes. Otis Seuss, 2002, the Big Ten did put its best non-con games in weeks 1 and 3. They should have mixed it up. And again, if every program wasn't on its own, scheduling its own games, this wouldn't be an issue because the conference would look it over and our Voice of College Football scheduling committee would look it over and say, that's a bad week. We're going to move some games. Or it wouldn't even get to that point. All right. New Mexico State, Wisconsin, Toledo, Ohio State, Nevada, Iowa. Look out, Iowa. Possible upset. SMU at Maryland. Look out, Maryland. I don't even know if that would be an upset. Michigan State, Washington. Of course, the Huskies went to Michigan and got blasted last year. And Rutgers Temple. Web Security asking a question here. Will the Big Ten use a 3-5-5 model a la the ACC? I saw something reported today that the Big Ten was looking at 2 designated rivals per team. So how would that work out? If you had 2 designated rivals instead of 3, then you would have 11 other teams to play. So it would have to be a 2-5-6 model for half the league and a 2-6-5 model for the other half of the league. I don't agree with designating the same number of rivals for every team. Every team doesn't have the same number of rivals. So if you've caught my video on that, I've explained how I would do scheduling. And it has less to do with making sure everybody plays everybody all the time. And it has more to do with a composite 500 schedule. So you don't have one team playing this murderer's row and another team in the same conference fighting for the same championship playing a bunch of lightweights. Absolutely, Golden Blue dude. And that Ohio State game was close. It was a 6-point game with about 90 seconds left in the game before the Buckeyes hit a field goal to make it a 2-score game technically, but that was really, by all accounts, a 1-score game. Nebraska lost to 4 top 10 teams: Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, all razor close. All right, Sean. Hey, Mark, had to check out your channel outside of Miami Hurricanes football. Please do. Thank you for being here. Yes, we do more than Miami Hurricanes football. Good to see you, Sean. Yakov 22, always with the interesting questions coming in from Yakov. Mark, which Big Ten campuses / stadiums have you visited? Well, here's the deal. I grew up a Big Ten fan. I grew up in Ohio State, of course, by extension, Big Ten. But I have visited many more SEC campuses because that's where I worked. So I worked covering the SEC for 7 years. So I went to College World Series and SEC championship games and SEC tournaments and Final Fours and bowl games and SEC championship games in Atlanta at the time. So I've gone to many more SEC stadiums and campuses than the Big Ten. In the Big Ten, I've only been to one. And you can guess which one that is. I've not been to any other campuses or stadiums in the Big Ten. And because of what I'm doing here, I really don't plan on getting to too many unless there are more really good week 0 games out there in the future that I can travel to, like I did a couple of years ago. I think it was the 2019 opener, Florida, Miami. It was the biggest game of week 0. Nobody really else was playing, and they played in Orlando. So I flew down there, covered the Miami, Florida game, but otherwise, we don't have much to go on. So, yeah, that's the answer to that. Yes. Yes, web security. Familiar with Summit County? Absolutely. Dave, talking about loyal. I'll be watching UConn, Michigan. I don't remember missing a game that's at least 40 years, including a tour of duty in Guam and a Westpac cruise. Good for you. The first Ohio State game I remember missing was on my honeymoon. So my wedding was supposed to be scheduled early in the afternoon on Saturday, the first weekend of college football season. And we had an Ohio State game that probably much like this weekend. I was married in September, much like this weekend. The schedules probably came out in May. And I saw that Ohio State was playing Louisville at noon. And so we moved the service down to 4:30, something in that range. And then the next weekend, the Ohio State game. And this is when you couldn't jump online and watch the game whenever you wanted to. You had to DVR the game. So, yes, I had somebody DVR it for me and a backup of the DVR and all of that. College football the next weekend while I was out cruising. Michael, Mark, why? I have to ask, why did you violate, in caps, rule number 1 when it comes to college football? Well, as the voice of college football, Michael, I probably should be embarrassed to even say this, but I'm really not aware of what rule number 1 is. Oh, I guess it's no weddings during the fall. Well, there was compromise there. You know, just about every friend I have has gotten married in the fall. I can think of my 4 best friends, and one of them got married in July, and the other ones were in the fall. And yeah, there was college football that was compromised. All right, let's move on to week 4, Thursday, September 22nd. Illinois plays a game on the Big Ten Network on a Thursday night against Chattanooga. And then on Saturday, we get into Big Ten play, Maryland, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Central Michigan, Penn State. And this is where the game times break down because, as you guys will know, they want to get into the season. And once we get into the season, then the networks want to know how good the teams are. So the games aren't announced until the Monday, not prior to the game, but the week before, meaning the Monday prior to the weekend, prior to the game. So about 12 days in advance, they make their decisions. I used to always remember going into work before all of this was here and available for everyone to see all the time, even though I didn't work at ESPN pre-internet, that's for sure. But it wasn't like in 2001 or 2, like everybody was on the internet all the time. Remember seeing those college football releases on a Monday and us getting an email at work to say, these are the selections for ESPN and ABC for the next weekend, not that weekend, but the next weekend, 12 days in advance. Now, sometimes that gets screwed up because ESPN, Fox, ABC will make a projection on what game they want in 12 days. And then there's an unexpected upset that weekend that kind of screws up the matchup that they made the game for 2 weeks from there. And that's when sometimes fans wonder and throw up their hands to say, why is this game in prime time? Such and such just lost last weekend, and it's not as important a game now as some other game. Well, that's because it was scheduled 12 days in advance. It was scheduled way in before that, but the game time and the network was scheduled 12 days in advance. So going forward, starting on September 24th, we really won't have many game times for much of this. So again, for example, Saturday, September 24th, Wisconsin at Ohio State to be determined. If Ohio State and Wisconsin are both undefeated, that's most likely, it's an ABC game. They're going to put it in prime time. If, let's say, Ohio State loses to Notre Dame or Wisconsin loses to Washington State, some combination of that, then it'll probably be a 3:30 game. That's what happens there. And then I'm not going to go through all these conference games because once we get to September 24th and then definitely on October 1st, they're all conference games and some have been determined. There is a Friday Big Ten game on October 7th, Nebraska at Rutgers, FS1. I like that. And that's pretty much it. And as always, the one game that you can bank on. Saturday, November 26th, Michigan at Ohio State at what time? Noon Eastern. Sean, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Enjoy your shows. $10 to your PayPal. Appreciate that so much. So keep in mind, everyone, that in addition to the super chat, you can contribute here at the Voice of College Football, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. And if you understand anything about YouTube and the super chat component, you may want to contribute directly. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, just search MarkRogersTV right there. Trying to think what, our colors here are South Carolina colors. That was the last segment I recorded. No offense to the South Carolina Gamecock fans, but we're going to switch that out. It's not the best look. So we're going to go to the bright red that I like so much. Remick Johnson, Utah fan. Good to see you, Remick. When was the last time we had this amount of drama in this sport? Drama, meaning Jimbo Nick, meaning NIL and transfers all over the place, meaning Jordan Addison, meaning, is that what you're talking about? We haven't, is the answer. We have not, because we've never had this kind of player movement. And because of the player movement that is both a byproduct of the freedom that they've been given, but also the money that's out there. It's a combination of both. So the transfer portal cut loose in 2018, but we didn't really see an impact for a couple of years. And then, at this time last year, we were talking nothing but transfer portal because that was a couple months prior to NIL. We were just talking about players getting to go wherever they wanted to. So that's freedom. And then that was exponentially increased with the component of the NIL money kicking in July. So now we've got player movement that is increased tenfold. Michael would like to see Ohio State, Michigan play in prime time. Okay. I would not. Michael says, Mark, why not use old gold and black a la back from the 70s and 80s with Purdue colors on their uniforms? Well, we can do this. I don't know that there's an option for that. We can definitely go to black. I'd have to try to figure out what the color code is. It's like all zeros, I think. Let's try this. There you go. There's paying homage to Purdue right there. Tradition should mean something. And I'm not even for tradition if there are certain traditions I don't really pay attention to, don't care about, but others, yes. Okay, Yakov, a possibility for you to attend a game if Rutgers or BC plays a big Friday night game. Yes, I've thought of that recently. If there's a Thursday or Friday night game, whether that be at Boston College, Rutgers, those would be the two best options. Syracuse is kind of far. It's like 4.5 hours. And then we'll see based on where I might be located this year. We'll see. But yeah, that could be something. If I figure that could be good promotion and marketing for the network here, then that's what we'll do. Let's look at that for a second. Let's go to, let's see here. Because whether that's close proximity here or in Ohio, let's look at these Thursday and Friday games. First Thursday of the season, there are games at Arizona State, Minnesota, Purdue, Fresno State, UCF, Oklahoma State, FIU, UAB, Akron, Tennessee, Pitt. Ooh. Let's see. Yeah, Penn State and Purdue. I was thinking, and Joey wouldn't want me to say this, but I'm giving Penn State and Purdue priority over Pitt and West Virginia myself. I just think it's a more interesting game. But I do definitely want to see Pitt and West Virginia play, but they're playing at the same time as Penn State and Purdue by 1 hour. But if Penn State and Purdue were not playing on that opening Thursday night, I would consider going to West Virginia Pitt, seeing if I could get some kind of credential to get into the locker rooms, interview players, go to news conferences for that. On that Friday, we've got a game at Indiana. Interesting. Wonder how far that drive is. If I'm in Ohio, that's pretty far. And it's not that good of a game. Illinois, Indiana. Let's see some other. Do we have any other Thursday/Friday games of interest that we could travel for? Got nothing in week 2. There's only one Friday game. Louisville, UCF. That was a great game last year. And then Louisville plays another Friday game the next week against Florida State. But anyway, no other Thursday, Friday games. Week 3, let's see, week 4. Thursday, Illinois at home, Georgia State, Virginia Tech. Syracuse is at home on a Friday night. Syracuse against Virginia. That's still pretty far. Week 5, BYU's playing on a Thursday at home. Houston, UCLA are playing. That's a nice little night of football. Friday, September 30th, we've got Tulane at Houston, Washington at UCLA. It's a doubleheader on ESPN. Okay, the rest of those are on Saturday. Then let's see, week 6. Now, week 6, Rutgers is at home on a Friday night. Week 7. Marshall, West Virginia, UCF, and SMU are at home during the week. Week 8. Appalachian State, Georgia Tech, South Alabama, and Temple. But that Temple game, that's about 3.5 hours away. Who cares about Temple? Week 9 on a Thursday. Washington State, Iowa State, NC State, Southern Miss, BYU. Again, nobody close to me. Week 10. Kent State, Ohio, Northern Illinois, Bowling Green, Coastal Carolina. Boston College playing Duke, to your point, at home November 4th. Yeah, I will just have to monitor that as we get into the season to see if there's an opportunity to do a little tailgating with the Voice of College Football on campus. Yeah, I saw the just severe drop, Husker D, in people online. And yeah, that must have been all the Temple fans that left the chat. Yeah, I saw that Yak off 22. I just went through that. Yeah, Nebraska at Rutgers on a Friday. Dave says, if you don't think Michigan and Ohio State will ever play as the two best teams in the Big Ten at some point, you haven't paid attention. So somebody's not paying attention in the chat. Polamalu says Iowa will have the best defense in the Big Ten easily, but man, their offense, easily the best defense in the Big Ten. Easily. I don't know about easily the best defense in the Big Ten. They have the best combination of last year's defense and the most returning production from that defense, but Ohio State could be close. Shoot, Ohio State could be better than Iowa. If Ohio State plays up to its potential, if Jim Knowles gets these athletes together, puts them in the right place, and they play cohesive football, Ohio State has much better talent on defense than Iowa. Now, I'm not predicting that. I do think that, of course, Wisconsin always has a stellar defense, and Michigan's going to be good on that side of the ball. And I thought that from a talent, I thought Iowa probably had the best defense in the Big Ten last year. But from a talent standpoint, if you put together talent and productivity, development, all of those things together, then I would say that Penn State was the defense that could be the best. At its best, was the best in the Big Ten last year. Michael is asking about credentials. Do you still get credentials sometimes for games? Well, you have to ask for the credentials. You have to apply for them. I've not applied for credentials to a game since I got them automatically because of where I worked. Yes, Daniel, I was saying the same thing before you joined, that Penn State wasted a great defense. Yes, that should have been the best defense in the Big Ten. It probably at its peak when it was playing its best, it was the best defense in the Big Ten. And Penn State, the most underachieving team, I think, in college football. I can't think of another one. 7-6. Husker D, good to see you. Thanks for coming back here. And we'll see you next Tuesday, if not sooner, on Husker Live. No, Michael, they just don't throw credentials at people, regardless of who you are. There's no reason for them to do that. They have a demand for credentials. All right, so we've covered the Big Ten. And so I believe that the SEC schedule is out as well, based on some, let's see what we've got. So this was a day ago that the CBS SEC schedule came out. So here it is. So I love this. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's this year. So, I'm fascinated by this. Have you seen the CBS SEC schedule? Week 1 and week 2, no SEC games on CBS. And during those weeks, you've got Florida playing Utah, Georgia, Oregon. Who's Alabama play that's any good? Who do they have this year? Texas. Of course, that's a Fox game. But anyway, there must be, but between Fox, ESPN, and ABC, they must be taking up all the SEC games the first 2 weekends of the season, because CBS is showing Arizona, San Diego State on September 3rd, and then September 10th is Colorado Air Force. Yakov 22, Army Navy. Yeah, it's by itself. Obviously, nobody else is playing, and that's the week after the conference championship games, and that would be a good game to go to. What I wish I would have taken advantage of was 2 years ago, when I was still at ESPN, I was asked to attend the Army Navy game. I was given a credential to go to the Army Navy game, and hang out with College Game Day, and go see the game. And I just didn't take them up on that, and I wish I had. All right. Anyway, so going into the season here on CBS, I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot that we've got here, because they've basically only designated a few games. Penn State and Auburn on September 17th, and Navy Air Force as a noon game on October 1st, and then Georgia, Florida, October 29th, Army Air Force. So they want the military academies, the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games, to be on CBS. And other than that, Utah State at Boise State at noon on Saturday, November 25th. They've already slated the Arkansas-Mizzou game, and that's pretty much it from CBS. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. 1 hour ago, the SEC schedule. Okay, here we go. All right, SEC schedule, September 1st on a Thursday. Ball State at Tennessee, SEC Network, Louisiana Tech, Mizzou, ESPNU. Okay, that's opening weekend on Thursday night. On Saturday, opening weekend, Sam Houston State at Texas A&M on the SEC Network. Oregon, Georgia, the big one on ABC at 3:30. Cincinnati, Arkansas. Oh, can't wait for that game. I think that's an under the radar, really good one. Somewhat under the radar. 3:30 ESPN, September 3rd, Cincy, Arkansas. Troy, Ole Miss on the SEC Network. Utah, Florida that night on ESPN. Miami and Kentucky. Elon, Vandy, Mercer, Auburn. Memphis, Mississippi State. Nice little game on opening weekend, 7:30 ESPNU. Utah State, Alabama on the SEC Network, and Georgia State, South Carolina. And of course, on Sunday is LSU and Florida State on ABC. Okay, week 2 in the SEC. South Carolina at Arkansas, noon, ESPN. Mizzou at Kansas State, noon, ESPN2. Wake at Vandy, SEC Network. Tennessee Pitt's a 3:30 game on ABC. App State, Texas A&M on ESPN2. Samford, Georgia, Kentucky, Florida, ESPN, night game, prime time. Central Arkansas, Ole Miss, SEC Network. San Jose State at Auburn, ESPNU. Southern at LSU on the SEC Network. So really, opening weekend, the games to be considered, other than that Thursday night when just we all want to watch football and we'll watch anybody play. But on that Saturday, it's all about Oregon, Georgia on ABC at 3:30. Cincinnati, Arkansas, ESPN 3:30. Utah, Florida at 7. Memphis, Mississippi State, good game at 7:30. ESPNU. The Sunday game, Florida State, LSU. And then week 2, some decent games. South Carolina, Arkansas, Mizzou, Kansas State, Tennessee Pitt. Kentucky, Florida, the best one of the bunch in week 2. ESPN primetime. Week 3, SEC. Week 3. Georgia, South Carolina, noon game, ESPN. Then we've got Youngstown State, Kentucky, Abilene Christian, Mizzou. Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, 3:30 ABC. Mississippi State, LSU, 6 p.m. ESPN. Ooh, Miami, Texas A&M, 9 p.m. Eastern, ESPN, September 17th. Check out our segments from last night with Cam Underwood, State of the U, of course, on our Miami show, but we brought in Andrew Hattersley from Gig'em 247 Sports. We matched up Texas A&M and Miami. That was a good time. The next Saturday, September 24th, Kent State, Georgia, New Mexico, LSU. Those are the only ESPN games involving the SEC. Arkansas, BYU, October 15th, and then it kind of breaks down from there because, again, the game times have not been announced because they're waiting to see how good the teams are. Colby's here. Mikey G's here. Good to see both of you. Rob J as well. Yes, 3 months, 1 day. 3 months, 1 day. Dave, you're 100% sure Iowa's going to trip you up this year? 100%. All right, folks, it's been a good time. I just saw again that the times were released for the Big Ten schedule and noticed as well with the SEC, much of their schedule released by CBS and ABC/ESPN. And I wanted to get this out as quickly as possible. Check out, yes, the real MVP. You would be the one, Kentucky, Youngstown State. And that's versus what other games? That is the week of September 17th. Yes, that is a noon game on September 17th. And let's see what everybody else is going to be watching to Real MVP. While you're watching Kentucky and Youngstown State at noon on September 17th, there are going to be options to watch. I don't know, Notre Dame, Cal, Minnesota, Colorado, Oregon, BYU. I don't know the game times, so you might be in the clear to watch some of these other games at some point. USC and Fresno State, Nebraska, Oklahoma. That's a noon game. How about thought there was another really good noon start on that day. Not seeing it here. All right, Michael, thank you so much. We were going to come back, at 6 Eastern. I guess we will. We've got an 8 o'clock show with the Wholesome One on the Miami channel, but I was going to come back, and we had all sorts of really good topics. I've got a good topic for you here that we're going to run a series on next week. Here's our topic for next week. Type. Our series for next week is This the Year? I have thought of about 10 topics on, is this the year? Fill in the blank. And I'm sure many of you will come up with better topics than I do. Ty is asking, what's my ideal time for a big time matchup? It doesn't matter to me. Usually at night, but it depends. Whenever is the best time for that, for the feel, the vibe, the culture of that game. Ohio State, Michigan's going to be played at noon. I grew up with USC and UCLA playing at 4 Eastern. I'm getting accustomed to Iowa and Nebraska playing at noon on Friday before Thanksgiving. Well, Daniel, we did schedule a live show for 6 Eastern because then we've got Miami live at 8, but it's already 4:30, and me thinking about trying to get back here on live at 6 Eastern, but I wanted to talk about wild cards. Wild cards. I've got some wild card teams that could go either way that I wanted to discuss. Web security. Let's see if you've matched any of my ideas here with your topics. Is this the year, number 1, Miami wins the ACC. Number 2, the Pac-12 wins the playoff. Number 3, Clemson wins the Heisman. Oh, Clemson's never won a Heisman, have they? Michael, no. Ohio State and Michigan, the closest they've come is 2006, playing at 3:30 Eastern time. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for that as we reviewed the Big Ten and SEC TV schedules as announced. And we will be back here at, I promised, didn't I, 6 Eastern.